Welcome to video 3 in the series. If you haven't done so already, definitely check out the first 2 before watching this one. In the last video, we defined 3 main concepts or ideas which are constantly at play in Pat Metheny's music: consonance, emergence, and ambiguity. We've already explained how thirds and sixths between the bass and the melody are really consonant, and how different attributes such as harmony, cadences, functions, and so on can emerge from a more basic or fundamental principle. And our ability to reconsider different emergent principles allows us to create ambiguity in the music. Just to be clear, we're using the term emergent properties as a sort of big picture interpretation of a set of fundamental principles. For example, if I just have the notes A and F sharp and D in a vacuum, that's all those notes are. But if you take a step back, you might be able to reinterpret those 3 notes as a D chord, a triad. Furthermore, if we were in the key of, let's say, A, I could then reinterpret those same 3 notes as a 4 chord, and so on and so on. An emergent property is when fundamental parts, notes or chords, interact in a wider context in order to create something. Functions or progressions, modulations, tonality, post-tonality, all of these things. Don't worry if this doesn't make sense right away. We've got a bunch of examples later on in the video that will clear things up. Not to mention an entire song that exemplifies this idea. In the last video, we talked about the harmonic progression as an emergent property. We also found that voicings could be considered emergent and used as a driving principle. We played the CEA voicing, a third and a sixth above the bass, and played it as an ascending line using notes from the F major scale. So we were essentially using the voicing's structure as the driving force to write the music without actually considering the harmony or any harmonic implications. But we can take this a step further and actually use a voicing as a constant structure to write music. For example, look at the second chord in our song, this F add 9 over A. This is simply built by stacking a minor sixth, a major second, and a perfect fourth. We can also see it as a major triad with an added ninth, or a second, in which the third has been dropped an octave below. We can now consider this structure as an emergent property, independently of the harmony, the scale, or the key that we're in. So I can harmonize an entire melody like C, G, A, like this. And as soon as we play it, we're already implying a possible shift in the key center. But it's not entirely clear if we have left tonality just yet. Look at the first 2 measures in our arrangement. We're clearly in F major. But when we get to the A add 9 over C sharp in measure 7, we see that same voicing structure used earlier in the song. Yes, it's a couple of beats later, but it's the only other chord in first inversion so far. So it is a way of using the constant structure approach to write music. Now, at first glance, this chord seems to be a simple 5 of 6, a 5 of D minor in the key of F major. But the 5 of 6 should be a flat 9 chord, not a natural 9. See how this B natural is in this voicing? This is totally wrong in a tonal context. And you can hear that when you pay close attention. That B natural is out of place, but it sounds beautiful. It's really interesting because it causes your ears to wonder if the key center is still F. It's an outside note, and yet it still holds because it's a part of a constant structure. These subtle changes are essential and only possible when you reconsider different emergent properties to develop musical ideas. Had we been focusing on just the rules of tonality, we would have used a B flat or avoided the flat 9 altogether, maybe played an A7 over C sharp, but we would have never used a B natural. And now that you know what we were thinking when we decided to use this A add 9 over C sharp, you'll understand the second chord in the introduction. The bottom 4 notes in this C add 9 over E are exactly the same voicing, and we decided to introduce it right away in our intro as a way of establishing or signaling that we're going to reuse this voicing as a constant structure, as an emergent property later on in measure 7. By the way, there are many structures like this one that are very common in Pat's music, most likely because the guitar is an instrument in which constant structures or shapes are easily movable. If we want to translate this language onto the piano, we must understand these structures by intervals or by viewing them as drop voicings of some kind. We must also understand that we can expand this concept to more elaborate voicings. Remember, the piano is a much more versatile instrument than the guitar for chords and voicings. Let me give you a few examples of cool voicing structures and how we can build them. As we said before, we can take a major triad with an added 9 and then drop the third of the chord an octave below. This gives us a C add 9 over E. And we can expand the chord by adding a perfect fourth on top, which gives us the root of the chord, like this. Now, we can view this chord as a minor 6 on the left hand plus a perfect quartal on the right hand, a whole step apart. And you can use any of these perspectives to play this specific sound. Another example would be play a perfect fifth on your left hand and a perfect fifth on your right hand. And if you play them a half step apart, you get this. And you can view it as a major 7 chord in first inversion if you want. If you play them a whole step apart, you get this. Is this a C6 or is it an A minor 7 over C? You decide. That's the cool thing about reconsidering emergent properties. Switch your perspective when you feel it necessary to create ambiguity or to find new paths for developing ideas. What if the perfect fifths are a minor third apart? Then you get this. Maybe it's a 7 sus4 chord, or maybe it's just 2 perfect fifths. Remember, perfect fifths don't add too much dissonance because the bottom note already contains the perfect fifth in its overtone series. So perfect fifths are great intervals to play around with. Same with perfect octaves. So if you have a note on your right hand, you can add a perfect fifth and an octave above as a way of emphasizing it. And I could keep going on and on about this, but just to summarize, the more you use the consonance principle by using thirds and fifths or octaves as a way of creating voicings, the more colors you'll find to play with. And you have the option of reconsidering these voicings as types of chords, like major 7 or minor 7 or add 9 in first inversion, or maybe assign harmonic functions to these voicings. Or just consider the way that you're stacking different intervals as a way of creating color and nothing else. If you want to help us out, hit that subscribe button, comment down below, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on current content. Thanks for watching.